On the new site for the School of Visual Arts Masters in Branding, there's this really cool effect that we can add in. If I click down here in the corner, I can actually change the entire color of the page. So how do we actually go about adding effects like this to our sites? So I've just quickly made my own little project, something that looks like this. We've got some basic artist statement going on here for Mike Sully, and I'll just talk through how this is made. So we have this content here in index.html. I've got a div with a class of statement that goes around the entire statement, of course. In here, I have a H1, which is my heading with Michael Sully. I've got an empty span tag in here, which I've got for my dots, which I'll talk about in a second. I've got a P tag, P tag, and P tag, 3 paragraphs, and then I'm just styling this up. So in my style.css, I've got a font face, which is Afel Grotesque, which I've downloaded and added to my project. And then on the body of the page, the entire look and feel of the page, I'm using this font family with a font size of 16, a line height, background color of white, text color of black, and then some margin and width, so it has a certain size. And then in my div.statement, I've got a font size which is even bigger and a smaller line height, so they're not too far apart. And then I'm starting at my dot. So my dot is a display inline block, which means I can give it some width and height. I can give it a background color, border radius of 24 because it's half of 48, and then there's some margin on the right to move it apart. And then lastly, what I've got is div.statement paragraph, which has some gap between each paragraph. So 64 on top with some text indent, which makes it look something like this. So it's a pretty quick site to make. What we want to do is add this effect down here. So if I click something, we have this pop-up. What do we want to change it to? Depends on what we want to make it look like. So there's 3 parts that we're going to do here. We're going to add some content in HTML to add this new element to the page. Next, we'll style it up so it looks pretty good. And then thirdly, what we'll do is when we click on it, we'll change the color of the page. So on our page at the moment, there isn't anything that we can click on to be able to change the color. So how do we go about doing this? So I want this kind of new area to the site that's down in the bottom left or bottom right corner. So the first thing we're going to do is add some content to have something to click on. So we need to go back to our project and back in our index.html. HTML is where the content lives. I've got my div class statement, and then underneath this, I'm going to add a new section or a new area to the page in another div tag. Now this div tag, I'm going to give it a class. A class is kind of like a label, and the label I'm going to give it is, unsurprisingly, something like color-changer, something that changes the color. Now at the moment there isn't any content in here, so I'm just going to write the word color. Now if I go back to the page, what we'll see is our normal artist statement, and at the bottom here we have the word color. Now this is not clickable at the moment, of course, but we want to move this into the page somewhere. So I'm going to move it down into the bottom right. So I'm going to go back to my project. Where do I actually change the style of this page? It's not in HTML, this is the content. I'm going to go into my style.css. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore everything that I've got currently. I've got my body, my div.statement, which is my div with the class or the label of statement, and then all the other things in here. So further down on this page, what I'm going to add in, so I'm going to do this right at the bottom, give it some space, is we're going to pick the div tag with the class of, or the dots of color dash changer, the thing that we've just added. We're going to pick this. So we're going to then do something to this. We're going to use some curly brackets to do something to this. I'm going to open them up to make it easier to read. What do I want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is actually move this from down the bottom of the page to be always visible when I scroll up and down the page. I want to fix it to the page scroll. Where do I want to fix it to the page scroll? Well, in the bottom right corner. So let's do that. I'm going to do position is fixed. And where do we want to put this? Well, I'm going to put this in the bottom corner by about 24, bottom right, 24 as well. So 24 and 24 from the bottom right corner. So now we have this color word whenever we scroll up and down the page. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of style to make it look a little bit nicer and stand it out a little bit more. What do I want to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a border. The border is going to be a 2 pixel solid black, which is hash 000000. Let's see how that looks. Well, doesn't look too great. We want to kind of add some space to it. Maybe let's add some padding. Padding basically makes this kind of area a little bit bigger inside the border. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding underneath. I'm going to add 8 on the top, 16 on the right, 8 on the bottom, 16 on the left. So again, from the clockwise, from the top, 8, 16, 8, 16. There we go, looks a little bit nicer. Now I want this to kind of have rounded corners to make it look a little bit like a pill shape. So I'm just going to basically give it a border radius as well. So my border radius for this, I'm going to make it just really big by giving it 50 pixels, let's say 50 pixels, just because if it can't fit in, it kind of looks like a pill shape. So now what we have is something on the page that's styled up. If we click it at the moment, nothing happens. So how do we actually make something happen when we click it? So here what we have is when we click this, we get this little color panel pop up. What we're going to do is add an input with the type of color here. So to do this, I need to go back to my index.html. So in my index.html, I've got the word color, but still inside here, what I'm going to add in here is also an input. So I'm going to add an input tag. Now by default, an input tag will just go into a text tag. So we have something here that we could fill in. We could write the word red in here, but what we want to do is pop up when we click this, a color picker. So instead of this, I'm going to change the type of the input. The type of the input is now going to be equal to, in quotes, the word color. So what we'll see now, if we look back at the page, is this kind of pop-up. And again, I can change this and this will change automatically. But this looks a little bit ugly. We don't want this to actually appear. What I want this to do is kind of go over this entire tag. So I'm going to add a little bit of style to kind of get rid of this ugly thing that we have right now. To do this, I'm going to go back to my style.css, and underneath here, I want to select this input tag that I've just made. This input tag is in this div.color-changer. This div.color-changer. And inside here, I'm going to do a space, the word input. So inside this div with the class of color changer, there is an input. What do we want to do to that input? Well, we want to do something to it. We'll add the curly brackets. What we're going to do is just make this go over the entire thing. To make this going over the entire thing, I'm going to do position is absolute. We're going to put it in the top corner by top and left 0. And we're going to give it a width and a height. So what this will do right now is make it look pretty ugly. It's gone from a little bit ugly to very ugly. So something that looks like this. So we can kind of see what's gone on underneath, but I have this being the entire thing to click on. But I don't want this to look like that. I kind of want to basically hide this box, because if I click this right now and we change the color, it looks okay. It doesn't look great, but let's hide it. So to hide this, I'm just going to add on here, opacity is 0. So by adding this style in here, it disappears. And if I click it though, we still have this thing pop up and I can change. The next thing we want to do is to be able to change this and then change the background color of the page. At the moment, if we wanted to change the color of the page, we would change the background color here. So let's just do a quick example. I'm just going to change this to a yellow color, and this is on the body of the page. So now the body of the page is yellow, but this means that our users can't change the color of the page. So at the moment, it's just me, but our users can't change this. So how do we kind of make the users change stuff? Well, what we need to do is hook this thing up, this color over here, to this new input tag that we added. So how do we go about doing this? To do this, we need to add a script. So we need some way for our users to interact with the page. So here in my JavaScript, I'm going to add a new script, and this is going to be called, unsurprisingly, color-changer.js. I'm going to press enter. Now at the moment there isn't any code in here, but I need to add this script to this index.html. So at the bottom of my page, I'm just going to add some space and add a new script tag. This script tag, I want to pull in a certain script because I might have a few. Which one do I want to pull in? Well, I'm going to add a source, src, equal, in quotes, to color-changer.js. So I'm going to run the code in here. At the moment, there isn't any code in here, but what do we want to add? Well, the first thing I want to do is hook my input up with the body of the page. So I want to change this thing based on what my user has picked. So in my color changer, I'm going to pick two things. The first one I'm going to save to a constant called the changer. What is the thing that changes? Well, this is going to be equal to something in the document. And in the document, we're going to do something to it. We're going to do a query selector. I'm going to use a capital S in selector, by the way. And then we're going to do something. We're going to use round brackets to run this code. Then what we're going to do in quotes is pick the div with the dot, the class of color dash changer. So this is going to pick the whole of this div class color changer, but we don't want to pick all of this. We want to just pick the input tag. So here we're going to do a space with input. So this code here looks very, very similar to the last thing that we did here, this invisible tag that we added. So now what we want to do is take this, but we also want to hook this up to the body. So underneath, I'm going to do a constant called the body tag. And this is going to be equal to something in the document. Then we're going to do a query selector, round brackets, and in quotes, body. So now what we're doing is picking in the style sheet this kind of body style. So what we want to do next is say, well, listen out for any changes on the color in the bottom right corner. If it does do any changes, update this thing here. So change the style sheet somehow. So my color changer underneath here, what I'm going to do is say, well, let's listen out for any changes on the changer. So we're going to pick the changer, then do something to the changer. We're going to add an event listener. What do we want to listen out for? In round brackets, we're going to say, now run this code. In quotes, we're going to listen out for any changes to the input. What do we want to do when any changes to the input happens? Well, after this, we're going to do a comma. Still got my round thing at the end, but we're going to run some code. What code do we want to run? Function, round brackets, curly brackets. We want to run some code. So when we have these curly brackets, this is going to run something. It's going to do something. Just like in CSS, we do something, curly brackets, which does something. Here we're going to do something. What do we want to do? Well, I'm going to open up my curly brackets just to make this easier to read. What I want to do is pick the changer's new value and apply this to the style of the page. So the style of the page is the body tag. This is in HTML, but we want to change the style. So on this, we're going to change the dot style. What do we want to change as part of the style? Well, we want to do a dot, the background color. So notice this is slightly different than what we have in our style sheet. So here we had background dash color. Here what we have is background no dash, but with the capital color here instead. This is going to be equal to something brand new. We're going to update this to be the changer dot value. So the changer is an input tag, and when we update this input, it has a value, and then we can change the background color. So let's see it in action. So if I go to my preview now, if I click here and I change the page, it changes the background of the page, and I can change it to whatever color I want, including black as well. So when I change it to a dark color, how do we make this text go white? We'll talk about that in the next part. So we're going to go beyond SVA's website. So when we go to a pale color or even white, we're going to change the text color the other way. So we want to kind of go the opposite way. So when it's actually black, we want to kind of make the text white. So how do we do this? Now we're going to use a little tool called chroma.js, which does a lot of complicated math under the hood. So we don't want to kind of work out our own math and colors. They're kind of quite tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to chroma.js, and in the corner, we can actually download it from GitHub, which is over here. If we follow the instructions down here, it says you can download chroma.min.js. We could do that, or we could use the hosted version. If I click this, it gives us something to use. And again, I can kind of take this code and put it into my project. Now, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go back to our project, and we're going to go to our index.html because we want to load chroma.js into our project. Now, we want to do this before we do any of our code because we want to use chroma.js in our code. We want it to load before our code loads. So we're going to add a new script tag here, and we're going to add a space. The source is going to be equal, in quotes, to what? Well, we don't have chroma.js downloaded. We could do and then add it to the project. What I'm going to do is use this URL. I'm going to copy this and then paste it in here. So this is quite long. I would just go to the project and get this URL like that. So what this means now is we can use any of these Chroma.js things in our projects. But how do we detect a color? Well, what we would do is we'd say Chroma brackets the color, and then we can do things to this color. What do we want to do in our project? Well, there's a lot of things in here that we can actually do. Now, as we scroll down, there's a lot of kind of things that we can say in here. We can find things like the temperature of these colors, for instance. We do a mix between two different colors if you want to make some new ones in here. But what we want to do is just a little bit further down. In here, what we want to do is actually get the luminance. Luminance is basically the brightness, and this gives us a score between 1 and 0. 1 when it's white, 0 when it's black. So what we want to detect is our color, and what is the luminance of this color is what score we're going to give it. So to do this, we're going to go back to our color changer. So within my function, I'm going to give it some more space. What I'm going to say is, well, I kind of want to make this a chroma color. So now I've just loaded it. I'm going to give it a constant in here of color. Now this is going to be equal to, using chroma, how do we do this? We say the chroma, and then usually we put our own color in here. We don't have our own color, we have our user's selected color instead. So here in brackets, what we're going to say is the changer.value. Now we can detect things using chroma. So on this color that we've just made, we can say, how bright is this color? So what we're going to say here is an if statement, if round brackets, curly brackets. So if this color has a luminance over a certain value, is it more white or more black, then we're going to do something. So here we're going to pick this color from here, up here, do dot luminance. So I'm just going to spell this correctly, and then we're going to run this. So color.luminance, we're going to make sure that this is less than 0.3. So I've picked 0.3 just based on this kind of number scale. So round about between here and here is kind of when I want to change this color around. What do we want to do? So in my curly brackets, I'm just going to open this up. There we go. What we're going to do is on the body tag, we're going to make a change. So instead of this changing using this dot style, dot background color, we could do that in here. What I'm going to do is add a new class to this body and say this body should have this text color, not black, but white. So here what I'm going to say is on my body tag, which I picked from earlier, we're going to add a class list, and we're going to add to this dark. So I'm going to say my body can have a tag or a class of dark if the luminance is less than a certain amount. But what happens if it's not? Well, let's say I add it and then remove it. So what I want to do is an else. So in here, I'm going to use else and then curly brackets. So if the luminance is less than 0.3, we want to add a tag or a class of dark. If it's not that, I want to remove any classes of dark that have been added. So on the body tag, we're going to add a class list, and we're going to remove any dark tag that could have been added. What does this actually do to our page? Now, dark is just a word that we've made. It could be called isDark or anything else. So if we look at the page right now, click color and make it something pretty dark, notice that the text is still black. But now by adding this class in here, what I can do in my style.css is change this entire page. So under my body tag, here what I want to do is say if the body has a class or a tag of dark, which I added in my JavaScript, I'm going to do something. Now this is sad because technically this is added with JavaScript. It's not part of our index.html. I'm going to open this up and say the text color should be white. So #FFFFFF. So let's see this in action. So if we click the color tag now, hopefully, as we change this around, we'll see our text color change. Now, if you want to change the threshold of this, this is 0.3 is something that I've just made up. It kind of felt pretty good. If I go dark and then light again, kind of changes back round. Now, you might notice as we change it to a dark color, there's still a few things that don't have this color. Now, we want to change these things in place. How? So if we look back at our CSS again, there are certain things that have set colors. So my div statement, my h1 span, my dot in the corner is always going to be black. So at the moment, it's always black. How do we change it? Well, now because we have this body.dark, we can actually say on this thing, change the background color too. So underneath here, where I've got my dot, I'm going to say body.dark, and the same thing as above, div.statement, space h1, space span. And the only thing I want to change on this is my background dash color is white. So now if the body of the page is dark, then my div.statements, h1 span, or my dot, is also going to be white. So now if I change it, let's have a look. If I go to a black color, this is also changed. We also want to put my border in there as well. So the same thing, we're just going to go down the page. Here is my black border. So underneath here, I'm going to say body.dark, my div.color changer. My border is 2 pixels, solid, but white this time. So we're going to go the other way. So now what I'll see is if I go dark, we can change this around in the different ways. Now I can also add some tweening and transitions in here. How do I do that? Well, the same kind of idea. So if I go back to my body of the page, not my body.dark because I want to do it on, add, and remove, I'm also going to add a transition. What transition? Well, I want to change the text color over 1s, 1 second. Let's see how that looks. Again, if I just change this to a dark color, this fades in and it fades back out the other way. Now this only does it on the text at the moment. It doesn't do it on the dot and the border. We can do the same thing. We just need to add a transition, not a transition for the color, the background color this time, on the main thing, not the body.dark, because I want to do it on and off. I'm going to do a transition for the background color, also 1s. And the same thing for my border on my div.color changer, a transition on the border, 1s. So this will add this transition effect in as well. So if I just change this to a dark color very quickly, we can see that this automatically changes the entire page. So we have this kind of really interesting color changer that we can add really, really quickly. This is a very simple thing to do. We've actually gone beyond what SVA have done here. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out our JavaScript for Designers course or our experimental typography for the web course.